Thanks for downloading the 15th in our series of episodes of the C-Suite podcast that we're recording in partnership with the European PR Agency Tyto and their own Without Borders podcast, where we are interviewing leaders of unicorn companies to find out about the key issues, pain points, and challenges that startups face and how they can address them with a strategic approach to marketing and communications. My name is Russell Goldsmith, and my co-host for this series of interviews is Tyto's founder, Brendon Craigie. And today we are thrilled to be joined online from Palo Alto by Vijay Tella, CEO and founder of Workato, the leading enterprise automation platform that helps organizations work faster and smarter without compromising security and governance. Now, back in January, Workato announced a $110 million Series D funding, which helped them reach a valuation of $1.7 billion. Welcome to the show, Vijay. We should probably start by getting you to give us a quick introduction to the business.
Yes, thank you for having me here, Russell. So Workato is a platform to help customers connect or integrate across all of the different applications they have in a company and automate workflows, how they get the work done across their applications and people across the company. There's just an explosion of SaaS applications, a lot of fragmentation of data. The work context is chopped up, pieces of work gets done in hundreds of apps. So really making them all work together cohesively is what we do. And I think the other sort of a big aspect of what we do is also how we believe it should be done. Historically, this type of platforms for integration were the domain of IT, or the technical experts. With where the businesses are going, it's really important to have the entire team, IT and business, on board with having them to be able to work better and change, how they transform how their companies work. So it's a team sport. So this kind of platform needs to be accessible to both business and technology users, non-technical and technical users. So that's what we do. It's
obviously not the first company that you've started, but when did you actually launch the business, and what prompted you to start it?
Yeah, so I have been in the integration space for a long time. I was a founder of a company called TIBCO, where we created this technology called the TIB, which was sort of the first, platform in the enterprise software space designed specifically to integrate applications and data together. And I've, had an experience with a couple of billion-dollar products in that category at TIBCO, then at Oracle. But what we're doing at Workato was a lot more inspired by some time I spent in the consumer space. I was doing a consumer video application, totally different audience, different expectations. But I think when I took some time out in the consumer software and came back into the enterprise space, what I saw was there was this huge movement to consumerization of business technology with SaaS applications, but the underlying platforms to make them all work together remain the domain of IT and technical experts. So what really prompted us to start Workato was the realization that the same kind of people that were using our mobile video streaming app to stream their children's football games in the weekends would go to work and set up marketing campaigns and run. It's the domain of business people is very big, and the ability for them to put the power in the hands of the domain experts to be able to be able to connect the apps. So the problem, it was much bigger in terms of what the type of things it needs to do. It's not just a plumbing problem, but it affects all the people in the company, but also who can do this automation. So we saw that the problem we solved back in the day with TIBCO was like much bigger, in scope of what it needs to do and who it needs to serve. So that's what prompted us to think about, taking a fresh look at this problem.
And who is the us that you're referring to there? Did you bring a team together specifically for this?
Yes. So the initial team was the team that I had worked with at TIBCO. So back at TIBCO, TIBCO was like almost a 14-year journey for me. There's a team that we put together there to build a product called Business Works that became sort of the prototype or the blueprint for how integrations were done. So the later, companies that came on later, like MuleSoft, Informatica, Dell Boomi, they took what TIBCO did in the cloud and in on-premise and moved it to the cloud. So the team that built BusinessWorks, right, that was sort of almost the defining product in the integration space. That product replaced all the stuff that I built earlier. And I reconnected that with that team after after I left my consumer company got acquired by Skype. I took some time out and reconnected with them, and they were the ones that really stayed involved in the space, and they were the ones that pointed out how difficult the problem is, because I was at that point checked out of the enterprise software for many years. So it's after reconnecting with Gautam Viswanathan, was one of my co-founders, and a couple of other colleagues that we kind of connected the dots between what I saw in the consumer space and what they saw needed to be done in the enterprise, and felt that there was a big problem to solve here.
And just kind of building on that a little bit, Vijay, you've obviously been in the industry for, I think it's the integration space for kind of approximately 3 decades. So you've obviously got a lot of experience in that area. And you've kind of touched on how you've wanted to kind of have a kind of really focus on the user experience to kind of broaden out the benefits of your technology to a wider audience. I just wondered, were there any other kind of learnings that you and your team had that kind of informed a different approach at Workato?
Absolutely. So one of the things that I've seen over time in the enterprise software is that how products are built and what they do is sort of like very, there's a pattern, right? So if you look at integration space or business intelligence space or data warehouse space, whatever, pick any sort of a platform space, there is innovations that happen typically in how the products get delivered. So what I mean by that is, in the case of integration, TIBCO did this on-prem, and then MuleSoft and others came and said, you don't have to install it on-prem, we'll give you the option to do it in cloud. So this hybrid cloud on-prem architecture. And then there's other products that came in later on that would say, well, we'll run more, completely in the cloud. So it's the same type of problem that is being solved for the same audience, but delivered in better ways. It's not to minimize that. It's how you deliver the product has huge implications of how easy it is to consume. So those were big innovations. But what we saw was that there is not a rethinking of the problem itself, right? So there's it's the same thing in the business intelligence space. It's like, okay, there is the on-prem version, there's a hybrid version, there's a cloud version, and the Uber off integration, Uber off. Like, it's just the paradigms. There's just a predictable paradigm in which. So one of the things that we saw when I was completely checked out for many years, 6 or 7 years, is not following enterprise software at all. When I got back into it, it was a bit of a whiplash. It just in the consumer world, when my live streaming product was down for for a few minutes, Ashton Kutcher would be screaming on internet. It was like a $5 per month product. 5% of the people were paying, where 20 million users were profitable, versus like products that were built for enterprise that were hard, that routinely go down, and they, it's just a whiplash in terms of in many ways, the expectations of being always on and being perfect were even higher in the consumer space. There's 2 big dimensions in which we felt like things needed to be completely rethought bottom up, not an incremental improvement like let's do an Uber of MuleSoft. So one is it's just total rethink on who your audience is and what the experiences need to be. Number one. The second one is that its integration was always and seen as a plumbing problem. We actually called ourselves the digital plumbers. Like, there were people in the back, these experts that would like connect up your, lay the plumbing between your apps to get the data synced between your business systems. But now, when you look at the proliferation of hundreds of apps, thousands of apps across the entire company, hundreds of apps in individual departments, the problem is much bigger. The plumbing problem is still there. The data still need to be synced up, but it's a much bigger plumbing problem. But it's now no longer just a domain of IT. When you look at business teams, I talked about the marketing person that goes to work and sets up marketing campaigns between Salesforce, Workato, and so on. for them, they don't think about integration and plumbing. They want to have their workflows work across their applications. So for them, integrations look like workflows. Like, so they think they come top down, and it's a different perspective, and it's a different problem. So the workflow problem is also an integration problem. But there's a third aspect of it, right? Which is the workflow problem is like affecting all the, like Salesforce admins and operations people, HR ops. These are the people that are setting up the systems. They need to kind of tie them together. But every single worker in a company, digital worker, they have like a lot of different applications they're working with. If you're a support person, you've got like 40 tabs on your browser. When a support ticket comes in on Zendesk, you're going to look up, hey, is that customer in good standing in the financial system? Do they have prior trouble tickets? What type of customer they are? There's just a lot of context that you're hopping across different applications and piecing this together, and then the next ticket comes, you do it all over again. So there's just a lot of fragmentation, not just at the plumbing IT level, but top to bottom across the company. So the scope of the problem is bigger. So what integration meant in the SaaS era is the best of breed, business driven SaaS era it is plumbing problems plus much more. So the scope of the problem is bigger, the audience is different, and the expectations and experience must be completely different. So there was almost nothing about what we did before we felt was relevant. So under the covers, it needed to really be strong and highly performant, secure, but that needs to be under the covers. Behind the wheels, it needed to be like a platform the entire company can use. We put together a completely unique team, right? We put together people from very different places, from consumer and cloud native companies, integration, and so on, to rethink this problem bottom up and from first principles. It's a harder thing to do, but we felt that's what somebody needed to do, is to kind of really solve this problem more completely and cohesively versus having 6 different platforms for little bits and pieces of it.
And has it proven challenging, kind of building a platform that's both trusted by IT but also kind of works for the whole business?
Well, it was technically challenging. We had to solve some very hard problems architecturally in order for us to be able to bury the technical details and make the product usable for business users. So I just mentioned a couple of examples, right? One is that when you're a business user, you're not an expert in doing this, like, marketing automation or employee onboarding workflow, but there are 10,000 other people that have done the same thing. So if we could create a community of users that could create these integrations, use them, and make them available to other people to be able to use, it's not just a technical problem of doing this workflows. It's a thinking problem of, what signals do I look for and how do I tie this together? So the community aspect of it is really important, but making integrations that somebody created in company A usable in company B is very difficult because all the apps are different. The apps are also customized differently. There's no two Salesforce apps that are same. Every company has got different Salesforce, right? So the ability to clone or reuse recipes created in one company, in one environment, and being used in a completely differently customized environment was a core, core IP that we created, to start the company. There's a list of 18 items that we felt we had to solve. One other at the other end of the spectrum, it is things like the data needs to be, how you're getting data between the systems need to be really bulletproof, meaning every piece of update from any app needs to be processed exactly once and in sequence. If you don't have that guarantee, you're putting the burden on the people that are creating the workflows to detect duplicates and all this kind of stuff. So these are all silly things that if you take care of it in the platform, that the business users are able to and it has to be super secure. So they don't, but it's not visible to them. So they can actually go and do this stuff, right? So there's a lot of innovation that we had to do to deliver this. But there's the other part of it. That's the technology problem. But there's a social problem of business and IT not trusting each other historically. So a marketing team would never look to IT to get like advice on the technology to use, and IT's domain was like shrinking into like things like the core processes and security and things like that. But as the SaaS explosion has happened, there was just there's clearly a desire we've seen between IT and business. The business would like some guardrails, some sort of a guidance, player coach kind of guidance, not controlling oriented guidance, but empowering, so they can actually do what they're doing and not expose the company to risk of leaks of data and things like that. So they want to be empowered, but in a secure way, in a scalable way. And IT actually really wants to be involved in making an impact on the business. So there was this undercurrent that was always there, but they were using different tools, different platforms. So there was no common language. So when we created this platform, there was just a huge appreciation that we've seen both from IT and business, especially from IT, that now there's a platform that we can give to business users. We can bring all the tools that they're using out of the shadows and have them use something where everybody is on the same page and there's nothing in the shadows. So we had to really think hard about both the technology problem and also the social problem around IT and business working together. And I think, it's been exciting to see how that has come along.
Yeah, I was going to say it's an interesting journey of how you've got to where you are. I mean, I mentioned at the top of the show in terms of just bringing it back to the unicorn, theme that you reached unicorn status in January of this year. How has that changed the perception of the company, would you say?
Okay, so let's say just internally, we don't talk unicorn stuff. Our experience has been building billion-dollar revenue products, not billion-dollar market cap products, right? So internally for us, it's just a milestone for us and the ability to support our plans to kind of really grow this business. But externally, absolutely, we've seen sort of a big shift in how people looked at the company. Clearly, we have achieved the product market fit. Clearly, we've it's a validation of our recognition by our customers and partners and the market about the type of product we have, our vision, our point of view, and how we're delivering on it. And this sort of this kind of a status, as you say, definitely helps with getting that message out more.
Yeah, no, I was going to say, I thought it was interesting that that investment and the announcement came right in the middle of the pandemic that we've been through. I mean, has that, has COVID impacted your business, in any way at all?
Well, it has, from a business standpoint, it has been a big positive, right? I know COVID has been just like devastating in the world out there. So we're not out here celebrating. It was a little bit of a, the dissonance we are seeing in the technology world versus the real world. But what COVID has done is it has really forced companies to rethink how they get things done, how they get work done. There was always a desire to be, transformative and modern, but there's a lot of inertia built into companies to change. COVID has essentially kind of really nuked that inertia. Like, it's forced everybody to move forward, simplify things, get their systems connected together. So we've seen this in industries, and also we've seen it horizontally across all kinds of companies. Like, we have we have customers like, Grab, which is like a ride-hailing company, in Asia. Like, their business was completely changed by the pandemic. The ride-hailing part of it really went down a lot, but they ramped up their other services quite a lot. So they had to bring new service providers on board. They had to rethink how they get work done, and the new types of services delivered new ways to new customers. It's a very fast transformation that, and we were really fortunate to be part of that journey in helping them rethink and rewire. They didn't have to install a lot of new applications, but they had to rewire the business processes and rethink and re-implement how the company was going to work and other people were going to work. Companies like Broadcom and MGM, right, which is like they're in the entertainment space. It's just become digital has become the paramount strategy for them to. So there's just a huge acceleration to cloud and to new business models. So we're seeing that in pretty much in almost any industry. We are seeing industry or like vertical, industry-driven transformation, but also in they're just horizontal transformations, like how marketing and sales gets done these days is completely different, right? I mean, there's the way you're getting your leads. You're not going to events. You're doing a lot of this online stuff. And there's a lot of digital noise around, like, who are your customers? How are you going to grow with them? And so there's a lot of information locked into how people interact with your company and how people are interacting with other services outside of your company. So, for example, if some company is going and researching products in G2 or G2 Crowd, or Gartner, or Tech Target, there are APIs for this that can let you know that this company is researching products in this category. These kind of intent signals can help you be much more focused about what you want to do. We grew almost 60% during the pandemic. So about 40% of our people haven't seen anybody else. It's how do you onboard people, and how do you get them plugged in? How the whole set of workflows around people and HR is completely being scrambled up and had to be redone. So we see all of these kind of use cases have put, it's just driven significant acceleration in our business. So we entered before the pandemic, our plan was to double our business last year. We went well past that. I mean, we grew past the original targets. So it was, from a business standpoint, very positive.
Was that a global recruitment, or is that specific regions?
It is global. We have seen this happening in Europe, in North America, Asia Pacific, and Japan. Japan is this is a huge movement towards automation, almost a mandate from the government. I mentioned Southeast Asia, in US, pretty much across all different kinds of industries, like retail, like there was the largest shoe retailer in the US, filed for bankruptcy and came out of it with a very ambitious digital plan that we were fortunate to be part of. Same thing in Europe. We're working with private equity companies there to help just accelerate the post-pandemic, the new age of working with their companies, at scale. So it's been across the world.
You've picked up several awards on the way, and kind of very much kind of emerged as one of the hottest enterprise tech companies out there at the moment. I wondered whether you'd be able to give us a sense of how you're planning to accelerate the company's growth this year, and how you see the company evolving.
Yes, look, I think thank you for the comment. This problem or opportunity to get companies of all sizes in all these industries to be able to get their data, applications, and people working together better is the biggest opportunity in enterprise software, right? So there's like huge estimates for how big this market is. We believe it's one of the biggest out there. We're a very small player, so we are just starting out, and for us it's pretty clear we're very early stage in that journey. But we have amazing customers, Fortune 500 type customers around the world. I think we've been able to build out a very solid product foundation globally to be able to deliver this service as a utility anywhere in the world. So we've laid the foundation, and we've got really great customers and partners. So at this point, really our focus is now on not, there's not enough awareness of us relative to some of the more established players. so the big focus for us is just the go-to-market, increasing the awareness, increasing our ability to support the customers, globally. So we're going to continue to be investing a lot in our product. There's some exciting areas that we're working on there to layer on top of our current product. We're also opening up data centers outside the US, in Europe, and then later on this year in Asia Pacific. So a lot of all that is really focused on helping us reach more customers.
That's great. Well, I think you've jumped ahead to one of the other things we wanted to talk about. So obviously, this podcast, we focus a lot on kind of communications and culture. And I was just, wondering from your perspective as a leader, what's your approach been to kind of raising awareness and differentiating Workato in kind of a very noisy enterprise tech space?
Yeah, it's a really good question. We're still figuring that out, Brendon, ourselves. Historically, our business was almost all inbound. What I mean by that is that our customers came through referrals from other customers and partners, and for a while, one of the biggest sources of referrals was when somebody moved from from one company to another. In our space, this within IT, the core buyers, this business technology folks, the average tenure is about 18 months. So they have been like a huge source of the first thing they do when they go to the new place is get Workato. So we focused on building a really deep foundation. There's a lot of products in the space that don't work well, including some that we've created in the past. It was really important for us to just go deep and get it right. So the focus was very much on the product, and the business was all inbound. There's two things that we're doing to kind of really change that. One is that within the company, we've created a significant outbound organization where we have identified industries and target customers in these industries, the most wanted 1,000 customers, for example. And we're going really intensely after that in an account-based marketing sort of way, right? So that we're raise deep awareness within the target segment. And then we are working more broadly on thought leadership, and getting our vision out there through other influencers. So analysts like Gartner's, Forrester's, HFS Research, and other influencers. And these folks have really loved our vision and what we're doing. So they've been sort of big amplifiers of our vision. And the third part of it, which is probably going to be the biggest part, is our partners. What really happens, with transformation and the movement to cloud is a lot of this work, the digital foot soldiers are actually these SIs and these, mid-size and boutique consulting companies. They specialize in financial operations for nonprofit or retail transformation, or they're either regionally or vertically or domain sort of focused experts, and they're the ones that companies are bringing on board to help them, to change. And we are absolutely the perfect sort of platform for them. They can dream it, they can think about it, and our platform really helps them to deliver on that very fast. So they have been incredibly passionate adopters of Workato. They are we actually consider them to be, sort of an extended part of the Workato team. So when we had our sales kickoff in February, we invited a number of them to participate alongside our company. So we see that ecosystem where there are almost hundreds to a few thousand of these ecosystem partners that are making the transformation happen on the ground, as being going to be our key agents for getting the message out and sort of being the force multiplier for Workato.
Vijay, just picking up on the bit you were just saying there about getting content out there and raising awareness. So in prepping for this podcast, I came across a report on LinkedIn, and it's by a company that it's the letters are DSMN8. So I guess they're pronounced disseminate. I don't know, but anyway, they look into the companies whose employees are amplifying their presence on social the most. And so in February, they released the figures for the computer software industry for their report for that. And guess what? At number one was Workato. So Disseminate, just to explain, they describe themselves as, this is off their website, the employer influence platform. And they explain that the chart is based on how engaged employees are consistently sharing their company's content within their own network, increasing awareness, website traffic, and generating new business. And so in the February report, according to their data, and it'd be interesting to know how they do this, but basically they've said that over 53% of your employees had shared your company content to LinkedIn in the previous 30 days of them releasing that data. How did that feel, reading that report and seeing those numbers?
I was really proud to see that. I had no idea about that people kept track of these things. I should not be surprised with what our team does, because they constantly, they're always doing things that just amaze me. I think just look at how we had like an unbelievable year with like almost 40% of the people having joined, during the pandemic. So we have a really special team. I feel like really, fortunate every day, wake up to be part of, to be part of the team. But this one just absolutely like came out of the blue. Like what, like how did it, what? But I think what it reflects is that as a company, we are all aware, we're all on the same page. We've got a great platform. We've got a really good solution to offer to a lot of companies, and most of the world does not know about us yet. So that awareness is not just with me, it's with everybody in the company. So we're all on the same page. We talk about this. So when we, and we put a lot of effort into creating content, not about Workato, but about, ideas for how companies can really change the game. How can they actually generate more leads and meetings and opportunities in the pandemic in a pure digital way, as an example, right? So, and we have a lot of really great content we do with our customers and partners, taking those ideas and those value add pieces to the world and sharing it is very, very important for us. I know our team was very active with it, but when you put it in relative to like being the number one in the company in the world in doing that, that's humbling. Nice. I think it was exciting to see that.
Yeah, that's really fantastic. And I guess it kind of is an external reflection of what a great culture you've developed for the business. And I was kind of curious what your philosophy or approach is to building culture in, a fast-moving, high-growth environment, especially as you noted that, I think it was 60% of the new employees or 60% of your employees now who are new, they haven't met each other, so how do you build culture in that kind of environment? Yeah,
no, our company grew about 60% last year, but I think that it's very high growth, and it's look, I think even before the pandemic, from the beginning of like starting the company, culture and how we do things, who we work with, the journey was always like the most important thing for us. Workato is my fourth startup. I think the biggest takeaway from the earlier experiences is that you don't remember all of the just great business outcomes that you see. You remember that some, but what you remember is how you felt working with the people who you worked with, what kind of challenges you tackled, how it felt working with them, and you build lifelong relationships. So to me, that's what you will tell your family down the road when looking back. So to me, the culture was absolutely and is the most paramount thing. We will change what we do. It's just it's the people and how we work. I think so. I think one of the things that we've been very fortunate about is like because of these prior experiences, when we put the initial team together, right? Like the first 20, 30 people, a lot of them had worked with. And I knew these people are just amazing individuals, not just like the best in their field. We had some people that like were the early people that created products like AWS and Salesforce platform, Force.com. And, the head of products at Splunk, the head of products at TIBCO, the chief architect of Skype, some really amazing sort of, category creating product leaders. But I personally knew them to be just amazing individuals, super humble. They really like nothing better than work with other smart people to tackle big problems. So I think the first 20, 30 people that we brought onto the company in this way really set the tone for, I think when other people come on board and they see people like Gautam or like, Amlan in our team, they are so humble that was always a really big focus. But now the stage when you're going, I've also seen in my past experiences, as you go through these high stages of growth, there's incredible stresses created on that culture. It is just hard to, overstate how challenging it is to maintain and build upon a culture when you're growing fast and you're growing from hundreds to maybe 1,000 people in the not too distant future. So that's the thing that I really worry about the most. I think it's, yes, I think there's a big market and we need to grow fast and we're going to take the market. But the thing that I worry about the most is how do we build upon that culture, right? And we have these things called the core operating principles in the company. It's not values that we put up on the wall like honesty, integrity, and all, which feel preachy. There's too many examples of companies that have those values that don't follow them. So we've taken a different approach to these what we call our core guiding principles or operating principles of keeping the customers first, biasing the long term towards the long term, winning as a team, being transparent. There's just there's about 8 of these things that we talk about. These things were not very deliberate in the past. These were just by osmosis, where by example people were picking up. I think we need to get more intentional, and because inevitably, I think it will take a lot of work for us to continue to maintain that culture, and that's I see that as my job number one.
Yeah, I like that idea of kind of framing those things as operating principles over values. It kind of makes it more tangible, doesn't it? And kind of gives you some guardrails for how things operate. I was just wondering, you obviously kind of got a team of people around the world that work with you and for you. How do you kind of manage that from an internal communications perspective? I'm sure, in normal circumstances, you would be out on the road and seeing people, but, how in the past year, how have you kind of managed that internal communications with your leadership team, but also with the wider company?
So I think we had an advantage in the sense that we were always a very deeply remote company. We were not a pure remote company like some of the others are out there, but we have had a very strong orientation towards bringing people on board, the best people in the world, wherever they are at, literally. We have people from Siberia to Thailand to everywhere in between, right? So that we've always had that culture. So, and with sort of the leadership that we have, very experienced leadership, we have really good systems for how we work within each of the teams across all of these time zones. There's a cadence of how you work. We were one of the very first companies that got onto Slack when Slack released their product, back in 2013, 14. As soon as we started the company, we got on Slack. We were always very hungry about leveraging the technology to the max. So that was always part of the culture. So when the pandemic hit, in terms of the actual work processes within product development, right, within marketing, within sales, it was not super hard to scale the interpersonal working relationships. What was hard was that we didn't get to see these people. So even though we were remote, one of the things that we made a very big point of was that every year, between 2 to 4 times, depending on your role, we would bring people back into the headquarters, into the Bay Area. We even had these Workato houses where, people could stay long term without, feeling comfortable. So we have a big operation in Singapore. It's almost like a second headquarters. But we made a point of bringing people here. So we would work remote, but we would make sure that we are spending some very high quality time together, even with each other's families. So some of these people would come and stay at my house for some time. So we really got to know each other, right? And then that gave us the standing to be able to be great remote. We lost that part of being able to do that. But the relationships and the goodwill we've banked over time with the existing team have helped us to bring this new team on board. Two of our top performing sales reps, number 1 and 2 reps, were like people that we hired in the pandemic last year, right? These people have just been blowing the doors off into the performance, but we can't wait to we're hoping this summer, certainly in the US, it looks like we'd be able to do this. We're going to bring the Workato houses back. We will be working probably even more remote than we were before, because people have really appreciated the flexibility. But we will give, some people have permanently moved out of out of the offices and in remote, and they don't have to come back. But what we are going to do is to make it we're going to try to again get together when it is possible, just from a personal relationship point of view. We're going to bring that back.
What about switching from internal comms to external? How do you view that part of the role as an external spokesperson to the business? Is it something you enjoy?
Well, I've sort of begun to realize it's going to be a much more important part of my role than when we were building the company. So it was really sort of a switching of the gears when we were sort of creating this product and creating this company, where it was very much inwardly focused. I think over the last couple of years, we've been so I've had to personally make a shift towards spending more time to get our message out. And I think that is going to be even more of a focus going forward. So it's only something that we're learning as a team to make that a priority and really make that a big part of our jobs. Then that's probably one of the biggest changes, I would say, from between now and what we were doing maybe a couple of years ago.
The spirit of this series, Vijay, is kind of helping to pass on lessons from experienced leaders like yourself to kind of aspiring leaders. And one of the things we always like to ask people is kind of what the biggest communications challenge they've ever faced along the way and how they overcame it. And and it doesn't necessarily need to be at Workato, but previously, is there anything that you can that sticks in your mind as something that was a real challenge for you that you had to overcome along the way?
Yes, I think there's communication and being connected is the hardest challenge company faces. It's been a big challenge in every company that I was part of. There is always this sense of for example, people in headquarters are able to connect with each other on the water coolers, but people in remote areas don't feel as connected. I've never found a place where we felt that we communicated enough and we did enough to get everybody on the same page. So getting into starting this company from the beginning, this was like a big pressing, we knew this was going to be the biggest thing. So we tried to instill a lot of things into our system. First of all, having a very remote culture, but also one of the simple things when we said whenever there is some question that somebody poses on Slack, if they're in a remote location by themselves, that should get priority 1. We've got to answer that. Don't ever leave that unanswered. And if it's people from outside of headquarters, prioritize them, right? There's a lot of these things that we've done to kind of keep us connected, but we know we cannot communicate enough. So there's a lot of we set up a cadence, for example, that we have a once a quarter board meeting, right? What we do is the next week after the board meeting, we we go through the entire board material. We are completely transparent. Like I said, like the issues around, we need to get the message out, everybody's on the same page. It's because we literally take the entire board presentation. We don't want the entire company to be participating in the board meeting, but we take the same deck, the same material, and the execs will actually go through all of that with the entire team. So everybody knows in real time where we are at. So they're not getting caught up on what our strategy was 2 months ago. They're like, so there's just, frankly, there's, we even with this, I feel like we are always looking for what can we do to to communicate more within the teams and across teams. Like we're creating a very interesting new role reporting into me around this team level productivity and communication and all that. It's a different type of role that I'm trying out to get the entire company to be more on the same plane. For example, if there are people that are on our SDR team that want, usually the thing they look at is like the career path is sales, but maybe if we have this in a very good connected place, they could find other opportunities in customer success. So we want to have mobility within the company, the connectedness, and so we're always looking for ideas. I don't think we will ever solve that problem fully. But I
think that your point that you made at the start there of like really thinking that you can never communicate too much is a really good guiding thought, isn't it? Because it kind of always makes you kind of be on the front foot looking for new ways to do things, which you obviously are.
Vijay, thank you so much for giving so much detail and honesty in all your answers. It's been really great. We've got one final question for you that we've asked all our unicorn leaders in this series, and that's if you were to go back in time and speak to your old self, what guidance would you give yourself about communications? But also, what steps would you encourage yourself to take in order for you and your business to excel in those communications?
I think one of the benefits of having done multiple of these companies is that when I got into this company, I could give advice to myself a little bit when at the start of Workato, right? And I think it is really about think deliberately about the type of team that you're building initially. It's going to set the cultural cornerstones for your company as you grow, and really prioritize the culture at least as much as the business. It's very hard when you're doing a early stage in a startup to think about culture when you're like looking for survival and traction, but it's really important to prioritize that equally. Every team is different. I think you've got to I don't think there's some good ideas that you can pick up from people, and I have like the board meeting idea was something that I picked up from another company called Rubrik that actually did that. They were transparent with their board content to the entire company. So what a great idea. So be hungry for ideas. At the same time, know your team, right? When you work with people that you worked with in the past, but if you worked with them in a long time ago, you may feel that you know them, but our experiences have changed. So don't assume that people are on the same page as you. Just even with people that are close to you got to really be explicit and communicate. You just over communicate.
Tremendous. Vijay Tella, thank you so much for taking the time to join us online and record this today. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you so much, Russell and Brandon.
Thank you, Vijay.
Brendon, number 15 in the can. What's your thoughts on what Vijay had to say?
Well, I mean, first of all, it's an incredibly exciting story hearing about Workato's evolution and kind of like the inspiration behind the company. But then from a communications perspective, I thought that there was some kind of really great strategic principles and then some good kind of illustrations of those ideas. So I thought, his point about thinking very deliberately about, the founding team and how that team is going to really establish the cultural cornerstones of the company was a really key point. I also thought, like his lesson learned that you can never communicate too much is also another really useful guiding principle. And then the other thing I really loved was when he was kind of talking about, when you think back to companies you worked for, you don't kind of remember, the kind of the challenges so much as you remember your experience as a feeling. I think, again, that's kind of a very useful thing to think about when we're all kind of like planning to, our business and we're communicating. It's really thinking about what's the feeling that we're going to be creating with our colleagues. And then I thought there was some good, really nice little ideas in there, such as the point about sharing like the board minutes, with the whole company to keep everyone on the same page, prioritizing communicating with people outside of head office, because that's kind of really important in terms of everyone feeling close. So yeah, really, really enjoyed that conversation.
The bit about the founding team, I mean, they certainly started with a bit of experience there. He mentioned AWS, Skype, I think Apple was in there as well. Yeah. I don't know if he mentioned that, but that's a hell of a
I really thought that was great. I mean, and the point he made about those people and why he chose to build Workato with them, not just because they were kind of real experts in the area, but in his opinion, they were just also great people, very humble. And I thought that you could see how that's ultimately led to, building a really great culture.
That's it for this latest episode in this special series with Tyto. If you want to find out more about Workato, then their website is simply workato.com. That's workato.com. We'd love to hear your comments on today's chat, and you can share them on our Facebook page, LinkedIn, Instagram, or Twitter feeds, or in the comments of the YouTube version of this podcast. Those are all linked from the top of the website at csuitepodcast.com. Where you'll also find all our previous shows and supporting show notes, plus links to where you can follow us for automatic downloads of each episode via the likes of Spotify and Apple. And if you've liked what you've heard, please do give us a positive rating and review. We're, of course, available on all podcast apps. Just search for the C-Suite Podcast and hit follow or subscribe. You can also subscribe to the Without Borders podcast from our partners at Tyto. All the details for that are on their website. So just head to tytopr.com and click on the podcast link in the top nav bar. If you are a unicorn leader yourself and you'd like to be part of this series, then please do get in touch via the contact form on the website at csuitepodcast.com. Plus, of course, anyone can get in touch too with any feedback you may have. And finally, you can also reach me via the likes of Twitter using @Russ Goldsmith, or you can find me on LinkedIn. But for now, thanks for listening and goodbye.